We already have the ability to find a single item, so let's write out the rest of what is needed to display a single blog post. First, let's create the single post view. Add, Views, New File, single.php. We'll add the opening and closing article tags. Again, you could check to make sure that this post status is public. Since this is a single post, we can let the post title be the page title, so we don't need to add that here. All we need to show is the item details. Because this is a single item, we don't really need to loop. All we need to do is grab the details of the current item, which will be the first and only item in the collection. Echo content, current, details. Now we can link the post titles from the list to their own post. Back in Views List, we're going to add a href equals. We'll use the current page, but we'll add ID equals the item ID. Now let's go back to our index page. Right after including the config file, let's check for an ID being passed. We can then use that ID to find a single item. If is set get ID. We'll add content equals new collection. Again, let's add some lines to space this out. We're going to pass the repo, and then we're going to pass the ID. We don't want to use this ID directly. Instead, we want to make sure we filter input. Input get the ID, and then filter sanitize number int. Next, we're going to validate that we have a single item that we want to use. If is set content and the content count equals 1 and the content current status equals published, then we want to set the current title equal to content current title. Else, we'll select all the content and keep our title Treehouse Blog. We're going to add one last check to see which view we should show. If content count equals 1, then we'll include views single.php. Else, we'll add our for each loop. And let's go back to preview. Now when we click on a title, let's jump back to Workspaces. This is a call to a method, not a property. And we see our entire blog post. Our blog site is looking good. Before we move on, let's take a little more time to explore the use of interfaces. In the following challenge, you're going to build 2 interfaces that we'll be using later on in the project. Now that we're able to display posts on our blog site, what kind of interactions do we want to support? For blog posts, it can be helpful to track an author associated with that post, as well as a date that that post was published. We could say that we want posts to be trackable. So we'll define a trackable interface. We may decide to make any other piece of content trackable, like images. Using an interface will allow us to interact with these objects in the same way. Another important feature of a blog is the ability to share a post on social media. Besides posts, we may wish to share other content, such as authors or even images. Once again, we can create a shareable interface, which will define what behavior is required for an object that is shareable. Go ahead and give the challenge a try. I'll be giving you directions throughout the process.